healing through love without clinging the unseen path of parenthood. Have you ever locked eyes with your child and for a moment felt as if you were looking into the depths of your own soul? Not just the curious, innocent gaze of a little one discovering the world, but something much deeper, something ancient. A presence that seems familiar, as though you've met before, in another lifetime, perhaps in a place where love was more than a fleeting feeling, and time was but an illusion. In that brief, silent exchange, did you sense the weight of unspoken words, the echo of long-forgotten joys, or the shadow of unhealed wounds? You thought you were the teacher, the guide, but in that instant did you feel that your child, with all their purity and rawness, was awakening something buried inside you, something you had forgotten? A part of you may have long since abandoned, or a part of your heart you never knew was missing. What if this wasn't just about you raising them? What if they came into your life not merely to be nurtured, but to awaken you, to shine a light on the places in your heart you've long left in darkness? This isn't just about the love you give to them. It's about the love they are giving you in return, the healing they offer you in the quiet moments when you least expect it. In the teachings of the Buddha, we learn that nothing is by chance. Every encounter, every bond, every soul that crosses our path is part of a greater, sacred plan, a karmic journey that stretches across time. Your child may not be in your life by random fate. They may be the karmic mirror you've been waiting for. And through them, perhaps it's not just their growth that is being nurtured, it's yours. So, let me ask you this. What if the child who looks to you for guidance is the very one who holds the key to unlocking your own heart's deepest truths? What if every tantrum, every smile, every word they speak is a reflection of something waiting to be healed within you? As we dive into this exploration together, stay with me. The journey we are about to take is not just about understanding your child. It is about understanding yourself in ways you never imagined. This is not just parenting, it's awakening. It's the unfolding of your soul through the tender, sacred presence of another. Stick with me until the end of this video. This is a path to wisdom, a path to peace, and a path to deep, profound healing. Trust me, what you're about to discover will transform the way you see yourself, your child, and the very essence of love. If you feel this truth stirring within you, subscribe now. This is just the beginning of a journey that will carry you to places of peace you never thought possible. Let's walk this path together and awaken the sacred love that resides in us all. Chapter 1. The gift of arrival not by chance but by design. When you first held your newborn, there was an overwhelming sense of recognition, an unspoken knowing that stirred in the depths of your being, as if you had been reunited with an old friend, a soul you've known long before this moment. The child in your arms, fragile and innocent, seemed so fresh, so new. But deep down, something told you they were not a stranger at all. Their eyes, their gaze, seemed to speak of lives already lived. What if their arrival wasn't the beginning of something new, but the continuation of something ancient? What if the journey you now find yourself on was set into motion long before either of you were born? This quiet recognition is not just a fleeting feeling, it's a sign. It's as if the universe, or perhaps the very cosmos itself, is whispering to you that the child you're holding is not just a new life to nurture, but a soul that has walked many paths before, encountering lessons you may not yet understand. The child brings with them a legacy, a deeper presence that transcends time, calling you to something greater. You may have heard the phrase, "Everything happens for a reason." It's a comforting thought when life feels chaotic, when we struggle to make sense of why things unfold as they do. But what if the reason for this child's arrival is deeper than we could ever imagine? What if it's not just fate, not merely a biological accident, but a sacred karmic thread that has connected you for lifetimes? What if they are not here by chance, but by design to fulfill a part of your soul's purpose, a purpose intertwined with theirs? The moment you first hold them, you are not just witnessing the birth of a child, you are experiencing the unfolding of a shared story, a story written long before either of you could comprehend. It's easy to think that parenting is a one-sided journey. We are the ones who teach, the ones who shape. We believe we are the guides, the protectors, the wise ones. But what if parenting isn't just about shaping a child? It's also about shaping ourselves. What if, through this child, we are meant to be awakened to something we've forgotten, something buried deep within? What if their arrival isn't only for their benefit, but for ours? As parents, we often focus on what we can give them, our time, our knowledge, our love. But what if, in reality, they came into our lives not only to learn from us, but to teach us? The child's presence has a purpose that transcends what we may see in their infancy. They bring with them a mirror, one that reflects the parts of us we have long ignored or kept hidden. Their laughter may bring forth forgotten joys from the depths of our hearts. Their tears may unearth wounds we thought were healed, and their defiance may challenge the very patterns we have inherited. There are times when their pain feels like our own, when their joy seems like an echo of our own unexpressed happiness, and when their anger mirrors a rage we have not yet released. These are not accidents, they are moments of awakening. The child's presence invites us to remember who we were before life hardened us, before our experiences shaped us into who we are today. In the silent moments of frustration or deep connection, we are confronted with our own truths, the things we have buried, the lessons we haven't fully learned, the love we forgot how to give freely. Parenting, then, is not just a path of nurturing, it is a path of healing. The child does not simply rely on us to grow, they rely on us to awaken. In Buddhist philosophy, karma is understood not as simple punishment or reward, but as the unfolding of actions and consequences across lifetimes. Karma is a ripple, a wave that travels across time, through our actions, our relationships, and the bonds we share. The relationship between parent and child in this light is not just a random coincidence. It is deeply karmic, rooted in unfinished business from past lives. Your child's soul was drawn to you not by chance, but by a karmic pull that transcends the present. The bond between you is a thread that connects past and present, bringing with it opportunities for growth and healing. You may never fully understand the depth of this connection, but you can feel it in your heart. It is the gentle tug of a thread that runs through time, reminding you that this is not merely an ordinary relationship. It is one of sacred design. In Buddhism, we learn that the people who come into our lives are not there by accident. They are there to teach us something essential. The child who is born into your arms is not just someone you raise, they are someone you journey with. They bring with them the potential for transformation, not only for themselves but for you. Each moment with them is an opportunity to awaken to your own soul's journey, to remember the truths you've forgotten, and to heal the wounds you've carried for lifetimes. Parenting, then, is not simply about raising another human being. It is about raising yourself. The child's arrival is a continuation of a shared story, a story where both of you are students and teachers in equal measure. The moments of joy and sorrow, of frustration and love, are not separate from your own soul's journey. They are the very steps that lead you to deeper understanding. So when you look into their eyes, remember, their arrival was not random. It was a continuation of an ancient story, a story where both of you have come to remember, to heal, and to grow together. And perhaps in the end, it is not just them who needs to be raised. Perhaps it is us too who are being raised through their presence, their lessons, and the karmic thread that binds us. This is not just parenting. This is a journey of awakening, of remembering, and of healing together. The child, it turns out, is not just here to learn from you. They are here to teach you. Parenting, in its truest form, is an invitation to awaken to the depths of your soul, to confront the unfinished lessons from your past, and to heal what has long been buried. As the Buddha taught, when you awaken, all beings awaken. Your child's arrival is a chance to awaken not just them but yourself. So in the quiet moments, in the challenging moments, in the moments when you least expect it, pause and reflect. What is this child teaching you? What part of you is being awakened through their presence? Because in parenting, you are not just guiding them, you are being guided, transformed, and healed as well. Chapter 2. Mirror of the past, the child as reflection. Why does it feel like some moments with your child stir something deep within you, something that goes beyond memory, beyond reason? Have you ever been caught off guard by a surge of emotion, a sudden upset, a reaction so strong to something your child does that it leaves you wondering why? It's as though, in that moment, your child isn't just your child at all. They are a reflection of the child you once were. In their innocence and vulnerability, they hold a mirror to your past. You may see them for a fleeting moment as that young person you once were, full of raw emotion, unguarded, unsure. Perhaps their laughter evokes a joy you had forgotten, or their tears stir a grief you thought was long buried. And in that moment, you stand not just as their parent, but as someone who has lived through these emotions before, someone who has felt that same hurt, the same longing, and the same quiet sorrow. The echoes of your own childhood are being awakened, not by your memories, but through the living presence of this child in front of you. What is it about their behavior that stirs this response within you? Why does their anger feel so familiar? Why does their innocence bring up your own long-forgotten vulnerabilities? Could it be that your child is not just reflecting their own emotions, but yours as well? These reactions are unsettling, aren't they? We like to think that we have healed from the wounds of our past, that we have grown and evolved beyond the pain of our childhood. But in the most unexpected moments, we find ourselves triggered, caught in an emotional eruption we can't easily explain. A behavior, a gesture, a look from our child opens a door to something that we thought was closed, something that, until now, we didn't know still lingered in the shadows of our heart. This defiance, this rebellious spirit, they remind us of a time when we, too, rebelled. Their pain, their frustration, their confusion, these feelings echo the ones we once felt but buried beneath the weight of adulthood. Why does their cry, so raw and unrefined, take us back to our own unhealed wounds? Why do their struggles, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, feel like an assault on our very soul? The truth is, this is not just about them. It's about us. Our children, in their honesty and vulnerability, become mirrors of our past. They reflect not only their own struggles, but also our own unresolved emotions, our fears, our joys, and the pains that we have kept hidden for so long. It's as if the universe has given us this child, not only to guide them, but to confront the unfinished business within ourselves. Business that we may have long forgotten, but that now, through their actions, is impossible to ignore. But here lies the truth. This is not failure, it's karma. Karma is not a punishment, it is a pattern, a ripple in the river of time passed down through generations, through actions and emotions both conscious and unconscious. Our children are not the cause of these patterns. They are the bearers of the mirror reflecting back to us what we have left unhealed. Their behavior is not just about them. It is about us, our own unfinished lessons, our own unresolved pains. This is the hidden gift of parenting, to face the echoes of our past, to meet the parts of ourselves that we have long ignored or suppressed. Our children are not only here to learn from us, they are here to teach us. They are here to teach us to heal, to break the cycles of reactivity that have defined our lives for so long. In every moment that we pause, in every moment that we choose to respond with mindfulness, we are not just guiding them, we are healing ourselves. Imagine for a moment that your child's defiance is not a challenge but an opportunity. What if their anger is not a sign of failure in your parenting, but a call to look inward, to ask why this anger feels so familiar? What if their tears are a mirror of your own uncried sorrow? A chance to meet that sadness with compassion, not only for them but for yourself. In Buddhism, we are taught that true mindfulness is the ability to see beyond the surface, to understand not only the external actions of others but the deeper currents beneath them. When we pause and breathe, when we listen not just to our child's words but to the feelings beneath them, we begin to break the chain of reactivity. We begin to see our child not as a challenge, but as a teacher, one who is awakening us to the deeper lessons of love, compassion, and presence. Each time you choose to respond with awareness, instead of reacting from old patterns, you are healing the wounds of your own past. You are giving yourself the gift of transformation, and in doing so, you are not just raising a child, you are raising yourself. This is the hidden task of parenting, to face the unfinished echoes of our own becoming. The child is not just the student, they are the mirror, revealing the lessons we have yet to learn. In their presence, we find the opportunity for awakening. In every moment of reactivity, we are given the choice to break the cycle and to choose a new path, one of love, awareness, and healing. So the next time your child triggers you, take a moment, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what part of me is being reflected in this moment? What part of my past, what wound is calling to be healed? In the end, our children are not here to mirror our failures. They are here to mirror our growth. And in that reflection, they offer us the chance to awaken, to heal, and to break free from the cycles that have held us captive for so long. Chapter 3. Love without attachment, the true meaning of parenting. What does it truly mean to love your child? Is it to hold them close forever, to protect them from every mistake? Or is love in its truest form the courage to let them go when the time comes? Buddhism offers us a deep and often difficult truth about love. Love is not something to cling to. It is something to give freely, without expectation or attachment. In the same way that a tree provides shade without expecting anything in return, a parent's love should be given without ownership. This love does not seek to control but to nurture. It nurtures both the child and the self, allowing both to grow into their fullest, truest forms. Imagine a mother bird pushing her young from the nest, not out of cruelty but out of deep love. She has taught them to fly, and now she lets them go. It is not the absence of love but the deepest kind of love, one that gives freedom to soar, knowing that the young bird must now chart its own course. This is love without attachment. The deeper we love, the more we fear losing them. Our attachment to them becomes a silent need, a need that grows stronger the more we care for them. We seek to protect them from the world, from pain, from mistakes. But in doing so, we forget something essential. We forget that to truly love is to let go. Attachment is born out of fear. It is fear that our love is not enough to protect them. It is fear that we cannot trust them to face life on their own. And yet, the Buddha taught us that attachment, no matter how strong, is the root of suffering. We cling to our children in an attempt to shield them from life's uncertainties, but we often forget that life, in all its unpredictability, is the very teacher they need. There's a story about a father and his son, each caught in the cycle of attachment. The father, deeply protective, would not let his son venture beyond the boundaries of their home. "The world is full of dangers," he would say. "You are too young, you do not understand." And yet one day the son slipped away unnoticed. He wandered beyond the boundaries, and though he encountered difficulty, he also learned to navigate the world on his own terms. When he returned, older and wiser, the father realized that the son's journey was not one of rebellion, but one of growth. He had learned the most important lesson of all, to let go. But letting go is not easy. Our attachment to them becomes wrapped in our own identity, in the idea of being needed. We see ourselves in them. Their victories feel like our victories, their losses like ours. And we confuse our love with control. We cannot see that love, in its truest form, is giving them the space to stumble, to fail, to grow, and to find their own way. Love, as the Buddha taught, is not about clinging. It is about letting be. True love allows freedom. It gives space for both you and your child to evolve, to walk separate paths with the same foundation of love and trust. In releasing them, you may discover a love that is not bound by attachment, but is grounded in trust. When we love without attachment, we give our children the freedom to make their own mistakes, to forge their own path, and to develop their own identity. Just as a tree does not grow by being kept in a pot, a child does not grow by being confined by their parents' expectations. Their roots must spread, their branches must reach, and they must face the storms of life. for it is through the storms that they learn to stand tall. Think of a river flowing into the ocean. The river cannot remain stagnant, it must flow freely, moving through valleys and hills, carving its path through the land. Similarly, love must flow freely, without obstruction. The child, like the river, will find its way. It is not the parent's job to control the flow, but to clear the obstacles, provide guidance when needed, and then allow the child to continue their journey. In the Buddha's teachings, detachment does not mean disinterest. It means releasing the need to control. It means trusting that the love we have given, the teachings we have shared, will be enough to guide them, and that they will find their way, just as we must find ours. This is the deepest form of love, the love that does not cling, the love that does not demand. It is the love that sees the child not as a reflection of our desires, but as a unique soul, a soul that will carve its own path, that will face challenges, grow through suffering, and emerge stronger. Letting go is the ultimate act of trust. In this act of letting go, we not only free them, but we also free ourselves. We release the fear, the need, the attachment, and in that freedom there is peace. The love we offer is not bound by expectation, but simply given as it is, unconditional, unwavering, and complete. As parents, we can't always protect our children from the world. We can't prevent them from experiencing pain or loss. But we can teach them the most important lesson of all, that love, in its purest form, is not about holding on, but about setting them free to become who they are meant to be. In doing so, we too, as parents, will experience the liberation that comes with loving without attachment. And in this freedom, we find a love that is deeper, richer, and more enduring than we ever imagined. Love, in its purest and most awakened form, is the ability to let go without losing. To love is to trust, both your child and the world around them. By letting go of the need to control, you open space for growth, for learning, for transformation. You show your child the most profound lesson of all, that love does not tie us down but sets us free. In releasing them, you find peace, and you discover that true love is not about ownership, but about liberation. Chapter 4. The Parent's Inner Child Healing Through Reflection. Every time you respond sharply to your child's distress, do you feel something stir within you? A tenderness that you cannot name. It is not just their pain you are feeling, it is your own, the unhealed wounds of your own childhood. These emotional triggers, so subtle yet powerful, whisper at the edges of your awareness. In your child's cry or tantrum, do you recognize the child that once lived within you? The one who, in moments of vulnerability, longed to be held, comforted, or understood. We often think of parenting as a one-way street where we give and nurture, but rarely do we stop to recognize that every moment spent with our children also offers us the chance to heal what has been left undone within us. The Buddha's teachings emphasize that the path to healing is not only external but also deeply internal. The child before us, our own flesh and blood, is often the very reflection of the child we once were. Your child's tears trigger your own hidden grief. Their defiance echoes the rebellion you once harbored against the world. You find yourself reacting, not with the wisdom and patience you wish you could offer, but with the pain and anger that still live in the corners of your heart. In these moments, you are not just the parent, you are also the child you once were, vulnerable and longing for comfort. Think about it. When your child withdraws in silence, are you merely frustrated with their stubbornness? Or do you feel the sting of your own unspoken words, the same silence that you once endured? When they cry, do you not feel that ancient ache within you, the one that yearned for someone to listen, to see, to hold you in your distress? There is a Zen story that beautifully illustrates this conflict. A young monk was walking through a village when he saw a child weeping. The child's pain reminded the monk of his own childhood, when he had been abandoned in the chaos of life. As he knelt beside the child, he realized that the tears were not only those of the child, but also of the child within himself. This moment of connection opened the door to deep healing. What if, in our children's pain, we are meeting our own? What if, in comforting them, we are learning to comfort the child we once left behind? The truth is, parenting often becomes a mirror for our unresolved emotions. Our children, in their innocence and vulnerability, reflect back to us the parts of ourselves that we have forgotten or ignored. And in these reflections, we find the opportunity for healing, not just for them but for ourselves. Parenting is not only about guiding your child but also about healing the child within you. When you choose to pause, to breathe, and to be present with your child's pain, you are also healing your own. In this sacred moment of connection, both parent and child are transformed. The Buddha taught that the path to healing begins with awareness, mindfulness. The practice of fully inhabiting the present moment is not just about observing the world around us, but also about becoming aware of our internal responses. When we feel our emotional triggers, it's an invitation to look deeper, to understand why we are reacting the way we are, and to offer ourselves the same compassion we wish to give our children. In the midst of a difficult moment with your child, instead of reacting with frustration or anger, take a moment to breathe. Close your eyes and acknowledge the feelings within you. Is this truly about my child, or is this a reflection of something I have yet to heal in myself? Let me share a story of a father and daughter. The father, overwhelmed with the pressures of life, would often raise his voice when his daughter acted out. One day, after a particularly sharp outburst, he felt a deep ache in his heart. He sat quietly, reflecting on the pain he had caused her. And in that moment, he realized that his anger was not truly directed at her. It was rooted in the anger he had towards himself, his unhealed wounds from childhood. The father chose to pause. He apologized to his daughter and held her close, not just as a parent offering comfort, but as a man who was also in need of healing. That moment of shared vulnerability opened the door to deeper connection. The child's pain had illuminated the path for the father's healing. In Buddhism, there is a powerful teaching about interconnectedness. It suggests that the healing of one is the healing of all. When we heal the child within us, we not only heal ourselves, but we also heal our relationships and the generations to come. When we are present with our child's pain, we create a safe space for both of us to heal together. Parenting, then, becomes a path of mutual transformation. As we help our children navigate their emotions, we are also invited to meet our own emotional landscape. And in doing so, we break free from the patterns of suffering and pain that have been passed down, creating a new legacy of compassion and understanding. In the sacredness of this shared journey, both parent and child can be transformed. As parents, when we face our own inner child, we unlock the potential for deep healing, not just for ourselves, but for the ones we love. The process is not about being perfect or having all the answers. It is about being present, being compassionate, and choosing healing, not just for our children, but for the child within us all. The lesson here is that parenting is not just about guiding your child to maturity. It is about embracing the journey of self-healing through them. Every emotional trigger, every moment of distress, is an invitation to reflect on our own past. By being present with our children's pain, we become more present with our own. This is the sacred work of parenting, healing through reflection. The child we raise today is the reflection of the child we must heal within ourselves. And in doing so, we can transform the cycle of suffering into one of compassion, love, and liberation for all. Chapter 5. Parenting as Liberation: Breaking Generational Patterns. Have you ever found yourself reacting in a way that feels unfamiliar, like a shadow of something you've seen before, something your parents did? It is a quiet whisper of generational karma, patterns carried from one life to the next. In the moment, it's hard to name. Perhaps it's a sharp word or a harsh gesture, something that just doesn't feel like you. Yet, when you pause and reflect, you may realize it's a faint echo of old behaviors, old wounds that have been passed down through generations. This is the power of generational karma, the invisible thread that ties us to those who came before. Buddhism teaches us that our actions, Our thoughts, words, and deeds are deeply influenced by the karma we carry. These patterns often extend beyond this lifetime, lingering as unresolved emotions or unhealed wounds that influence how we interact with the world. Parenting, then, is not only about raising children, it is also an opportunity for healing and liberation, both for ourselves and for the generations to come. There is a story about a young mother who found herself repeating the harshness of her own upbringing, even though she had sworn never to do so. She would yell at her child, much as her own mother had yelled at her when she was young. At first, she felt shame, but then she noticed something. Each time she yelled, she felt a deep ache within her, a feeling of disconnection and sorrow. It wasn't just her anger she was expressing, it was the pain of her ancestors, passed down through the silent transmission of generational suffering. In that moment, she realized that her own emotional wounds were tied to her mother's unhealed pain. Her parenting, then, was not just about caring for her child, it was also about healing her own lineage. The old scripts, the unspoken rules, the unhealed wounds of your own childhood arise when life presses on you through the vulnerability of parenting. You react, not just as a parent, but as the echo of your ancestors. Their pain, their fears, their silences all rise within you. When we become parents, we are not only caring for a child, we are also confronted with the rawness of our own past. The Buddha spoke often about the cycles of suffering that bind us, and parenting can act as the magnifying glass that brings these cycles into sharp focus. It is in our moments of vulnerability with our children that these old, unseen forces come rushing to the surface. Perhaps it's the way you snap at your child when they make a mistake, the way you impose standards that feel oppressive, or the way you silence your own feelings in order to avoid conflict. These responses may feel instinctual, but they are often the result of deeply embedded habits we inherited from our parents, habits they never questioned, and we never knew to question either. A mother, trying to manage her work and home life, found herself overwhelmed and impatient with her young son. She realized that every time her son asked for something, she felt a deep inner resistance, a feeling that his needs were a burden. After reflecting, she recognized that this feeling came from her own childhood, where her needs were often neglected or dismissed. Her inability to truly connect with her son was a reflection of the unresolved neglect she had felt as a child. These old scripts are not only written in our minds, they are woven into our bodies, etched into our nervous systems. They shape the way we interact with our children, often without us realizing it. But here's the powerful insight. When we recognize these patterns, we can choose a different way. But in this moment, you have a choice. By pausing and choosing presence over reaction, you are not only breaking the cycle for your child, but also for future generations. This is the power of mindful parenting, to interrupt the pattern and transform it into a new legacy of awareness, compassion, and healing. The Buddha taught that to awaken is to recognize the patterns of suffering that bind us, and then to choose to respond with compassion and wisdom, rather than with the same old reactions. Mindfulness is the tool that allows us to interrupt these cycles. When we choose to be present, to take a breath before reacting, we open the door to new possibilities, both for ourselves and for our children. One father who had struggled with anger for years decided one day to pause before responding to his child's disobedience. His daughter, who had been pushing his buttons all day, was about to be scolded, but instead of reacting, he paused. He took a deep breath, remembering that his own anger was a pattern passed down from his father. He asked himself, "What is this anger truly about?" In that brief moment of mindfulness, he saw the truth. His anger wasn't about his daughter at all. It was about the frustration he had felt as a child when he couldn't express himself. With that realization, he calmly sat down with his daughter and explained, instead of yelling. In that simple act of choosing presence, he broke the cycle of anger that had been passed down to him. Parenting can be the path to liberation because, in raising our children, we are also raising our own awareness. Every time we choose to respond with presence and mindfulness, We are interrupting old karmic patterns and creating a new legacy, one of compassion, understanding, and healing. There is a profound beauty in this process. By healing ourselves, we give our children the gift of a different future, a future where they are not bound by the same chains of suffering and reaction. This, in itself, is liberation, the freedom from the patterns of the past, the freedom to choose a new way. The Buddha's teachings on karma remind us that our actions today are the seeds of tomorrow. And as parents, we plant the seeds not only for our children's future, but for the future of generations yet to come. When we choose to break the cycle, we free not just ourselves but our children and their children from the bonds of suffering. The lesson is simple yet profound. Parenting is not only about raising a child, it is about breaking the chains of generational karma. Through mindfulness and presence, we have the power to interrupt old cycles, transform patterns of suffering, and create a new legacy of compassion. By healing ourselves, we heal the generations to come. Through this conscious, loving presence, we liberate not only our children but ourselves as well. Parenting, then, becomes the path to liberation for both parent and child. Chapter 6. The Wisdom of Silence: Parenting Through Presence, Not Perfection. We are often taught that being a good parent means doing everything right. We think it's about having the perfect responses, providing the right solutions, and creating the ideal environment for our children to thrive. But what if the true gift you give your child is not your perfection but your presence? What if the most important thing you can offer them is simply the act of showing up, without judgment, without expectation, and without the need to be flawless? In Buddhism, there is a powerful teaching about impermanence, that everything, including our moments of joy and sorrow, is in a constant state of flux. Parenting, too, is impermanent, ever-changing. What if, in embracing the impermanence of each moment, we can release the pressure to be perfect and instead choose to be fully present with our children? In our society, we often carry the weight of perfectionism. We strive for the perfect balance between work and home, strive to meet every need of our children, and fear that if we fall short, we might harm them. But in doing so, we lose sight of something essential, that true connection with our children comes not from perfection but from authentic, undistracted presence. In moments of chaos or confusion, we feel the pressure to have all the answers. Whether it's managing tantrums, helping with schoolwork, or navigating the challenges of growing up, there is a subtle, often unspoken expectation that we should know how to fix everything. We feel inadequate when we don't have the right words, when we're unable to soothe their pain, or when we make mistakes. But parenting isn't about having all the right responses. It's about being present in the moment. It's in the moments when we admit our flaws, when we stop trying to be perfect and instead choose to simply be present, that true connection happens. The Buddha taught us that awareness is the foundation of mindfulness. When we practice awareness, we learn to be fully engaged in the present moment, without getting lost in regrets of the past or anxieties about the future. A story comes to mind about a mother, overwhelmed by the noise of her busy home, who constantly found herself snapping at her child. One day, after a particularly tense moment, she caught herself in the act of reacting. She realized that she wasn't responding with compassion, but rather out of frustration. In that instant, she remembered that true parenting wasn't about always having the perfect response. It was about being present with her child, acknowledging her feelings, and simply being there, even when things felt messy. This realization was a turning point. She began to see that when she dropped the pressure to be perfect, her connection with her child deepened. In those moments of chaos, she began to pause, to breathe, and to sit quietly with her child. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. Her child, too, began to calm. The space of stillness created a sense of safety and trust, not just for the child, but for the mother as well. In another example, there is a father who would often rush to fix his daughter's problems, whether it was a difficult school project or a social conflict. He was well-intentioned, but it wasn't until he started to sit with her, to listen without offering solutions, that their relationship transformed. She opened up more, and he realized that his presence, not his advice, was the greatest comfort he could provide. The Buddha's teachings remind us that to truly be present is to embrace the impermanence of each moment. Parenting is not about mastering every moment, but about learning to show up fully for each fleeting second. Life, as the Buddha taught, is in constant motion, and so too is parenting. Some moments will be joyful, others will be filled with difficulty. But in each, we have the opportunity to be present, to witness, and to be a steady, compassionate presence in our child's life. Through our vulnerability and honesty, we teach our children the greatest lesson of all, that love does not require perfection. It requires presence. When we stop trying to be perfect and instead open ourselves to the messiness of the moment, we teach our children that they too can make mistakes, feel their emotions fully, and still be worthy of love. In the quiet moments of presence, there is healing for both the parent and the child. When we are present, we create the space for our children to feel seen, heard, and loved, just as they are. We also create the space for our own healing, for we begin to understand that we don't have to be flawless to be worthy of love. This is the wisdom of silence, the peace that comes from simply being without striving, without expectation. A wise Zen master once said, "When walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. But above all, don't wobble." This simple teaching embodies the essence of mindful parenting. When we are with our children, we don't need to wobble between perfection and failure. We just need to be with them, present, compassionate, and aware. As parents, when we allow ourselves the grace to be imperfect, we offer our children a profound gift. The gift of being loved for who they are, not for who we want them to be. In this presence, both parent and child can heal. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Parenting through presence, not perfection, is where true connection lies. The moments we share with our children are fleeting, and the pressure to be perfect only steals our ability to truly engage. By embracing imperfection and choosing presence over perfection, we create a space where love can flow freely. And in this space, both parent and child experience the profound healing that comes from simply being together, in silence, in love, and in the full acceptance of each moment as it is. The wisdom of silence is the wisdom of love without judgment, without the need for anything other than the present moment. Chapter 7. Generational Healing, the Sacred Pause that Breaks the Pattern. Have you ever found yourself reacting to your child in a way that surprises you, a sharpness or distance that seems inherited from your own parents? Maybe it's the way you snap when they don't listen, or the coldness that creeps into your voice when you're frustrated. It's in these moments, often sudden and unbidden, that the inherited wounds of our ancestors rise within us, like forgotten echoes from a past we didn't choose but still carry. It is in these moments that the weight of generational karma can feel most heavy. We all have it, those unconscious patterns that get passed down from generation to generation. Often, we don't even realize we are repeating them until we see the hurt in our child's eyes, or feel that sickening twist in our stomach when we recognize that we are doing the very thing we swore we would never do. It is as if we are not just the parent in the room, but also the child who once sat, waiting for the same love and understanding we now try to give. This is the inheritance of generational wounds, the silent, often unnoticed threads that tie us to the past. Buddhism teaches us that suffering is cyclical, tied to the habits and patterns we create over time. These patterns, rooted in attachment, desire, and aversion, can be handed down through generations like an inheritance, passed on not just in what is said, but in the spaces between words, in actions, in silence. And yet, within these patterns lies the possibility of liberation. The very act of recognizing these inherited wounds provides us with an opportunity to heal them, not just for ourselves, but for the generations that follow. Generational patterns of behavior are often carried subconsciously. We may find ourselves repeating the actions and words of our parents, unaware that we are perpetuating the same cycles. It is as though we are bound by invisible chains, shaped by the pain, the fears, and the unresolved griefs of those who came before us. These cycles often take root in the way we react to stress, the way we manage conflict, and the way we express love or withhold it. Think of a mother who, in the middle of a tantrum, reacts in anger instead of compassion. She is not just frustrated with her child. She is experiencing the echo of the anger she once felt as a child, perhaps from a time when her own feelings were ignored or dismissed. In that moment, her anger is not just her own. It is a deeply ingrained pattern from her childhood, passed down through silent gestures and unspoken rules. Similarly, there is a father who, when confronted by a child's defiance, withdraws emotionally. He tells himself he's doing it to keep his child from becoming too spoiled, but deep down, he is repeating the emotional distance he once experienced. He cannot help but project onto his child the emotional unavailability of his own parents. He is unaware that by withdrawing, he is not just disciplining, but reinforcing a pattern of disconnection that was born in his childhood. These generational patterns can feel so ingrained that it seems impossible to break them. But the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness offer a path forward. Mindfulness encourages us to pause and truly examine the reactions that arise within us. It teaches us to observe the patterns as they unfold, to recognize their source, and to choose a different response. By being mindful in these moments, we can break the patterns. The Buddha taught that awareness is the key to liberation. In every moment of reaction, we are given an opportunity to awaken to our deeper selves, to understand the underlying causes of our feelings, and to choose a response rooted in compassion instead of habit. Consider the story of a mother who, after years of repeating the cycle of emotional withdrawal in her parenting, finally paused one day. Her son was acting out, yelling, crying, and her usual impulse was to shut down, to become emotionally distant. But instead of withdrawing, she stopped. She took a deep breath, noticing the tightness in her chest and the tension in her body. In that pause, she realized she wasn't just reacting to her son's behavior. She was reacting to her own buried fear of being overwhelmed, a fear that had been handed down from her own mother. This moment of mindfulness became the turning point. Instead of reacting, she chose to respond with gentleness. She knelt down, looked her son in the eye, and said, "I understand you're upset. I'm here with you." In that simple act of pausing, she broke the cycle, not just for her son, but for herself. For the first time, she saw clearly how her own unresolved emotions had shaped her reactions. By choosing to respond with presence, she interrupted the cycle of emotional withdrawal that had been passed down through generations. The sacred pause is where healing happens. It is in this moment of stillness, between stimulus and response, that we have the power to choose differently. We can choose to act from a place of awareness rather than reaction. When we pause, we create space for something new to arise. We create the opportunity for a more loving, compassionate, and mindful response that can begin to heal not just the present moment, but the generations of pain and unspoken wounds that have come before. Every time we pause, we interrupt the momentum of generational suffering. We choose to heal ourselves, and in doing so, we heal our lineage. By choosing mindfulness, we not only break free from the cycle of inherited trauma, but also create a new legacy, one of love, presence, and understanding that will echo through the generations to come. The lesson is clear. In the sacred pause, we find the power to break the cycle of generational suffering. The next time we find ourselves reacting in a way that surprises us, whether in anger, frustration, or withdrawal, we have an opportunity to pause, to breathe, and to recognize that these patterns are not our own but inherited. In that moment, we can choose differently. Through mindfulness, we break the pattern, liberating not just ourselves but our children from the weight of generational karma. The pause is sacred. It is where the past ends and the future begins. In this space, we heal not just ourselves but our entire lineage. And in doing so, we create a new legacy of peace and love. Chapter 8. The power of compassionate boundaries holding space for change. Parenting is not about being a perfect disciplinarian or protector. It's about holding space for your child's growth while setting compassionate boundaries. True parenting is not about control. It's about creating a safe, nurturing environment where your child can explore, stumble, and rise again. It's not about keeping them safe from every storm, but teaching them how to navigate through life's challenges with resilience, self-respect, and compassion. The role of a parent is not to limit, but to guide, offering boundaries that act as both safety nets and stepping stones for growth. In Buddhism, the principle of right effort encourages us to act with awareness, intention, and balance. Parenting, much like life itself, is a balance of love, discipline, and freedom. Compassionate boundaries, then, are not about restricting freedom, but rather about creating the framework within which a child can freely explore the world and their own potential, with the security that they are supported and loved unconditionally. Boundaries can be difficult, especially when we fear our child's disapproval or pain. It's natural to want to shield our children from discomfort, from disappointment, from the hurt that life inevitably brings. Yet, the more we fear their pain, the more we can be tempted to overcompensate by offering too much leniency or not enforcing boundaries with enough clarity. This hesitation often comes from our own unresolved fears, the fear that our children won't love us if we say no, or that we're somehow failing as parents if we don't meet every need. The truth, however, is that children thrive on boundaries because they provide them with the structure and security they need to flourish. Think of the story of a father who, in his desire to be the cool parent, constantly allowed his children to stay up late, skip meals, and avoid responsibilities. He thought he was showing love by letting them do whatever they wanted. However, over time, the lack of clear boundaries left his children feeling lost and insecure. They didn't know where they stood, and they began to act out in ways that were disruptive and confusing. It wasn't until the father started to set loving, consistent boundaries that his children began to feel more secure. They learned to respect not only his authority, but also the value of self-discipline and responsibility. Boundaries can be uncomfortable, and they often stir up fear within both parents and children. When we set limits, our children might initially resist, push back, or become upset. But this resistance is part of the process of learning to respect themselves, others, and the world around them. In our own discomfort, we must remember that true love is not about avoiding pain, but about teaching our children to navigate their own pain with wisdom and compassion. The fear of losing control often keeps us from allowing our children to grow freely. But true freedom, as the Buddha taught, is not the absence of boundaries. It is the ability to make wise and mindful choices within them. Freedom comes when we have the internal strength to stand by our principles while also offering the space for our children to make their own decisions, learn from their mistakes, and grow from their experiences. As the Buddha taught, true freedom is found within. The essence of right mindfulness is cultivating an inner balance, an awareness of our own emotions and reactions. By holding boundaries with compassion, we help our children learn self-discipline, responsibility, and the importance of self-respect. These boundaries are not walls, but bridges to deeper understanding, guiding them gently on their path of personal growth. The power of compassionate boundaries lies in their ability to empower rather than control. They are not meant to restrict your child's life, but to help them build the internal structure they need to make wise decisions as they grow. Boundaries with love are opportunities for growth, offering the space for your child to reflect on their actions and consider the consequences of their choices. There's a powerful Buddhist metaphor that captures this idea beautifully. A gardener doesn't force the plants to grow. They provide the soil, the water, the light. The plants may lean this way and that, but the gardener offers the support, not to control their growth, but to ensure they flourish in the right conditions. In the same way, a parent must offer loving boundaries as a foundation for their child's growth, while also giving them the freedom to stretch, to explore, and to blossom in their own time. I think of a mother who once struggled with setting boundaries for her son, fearing his anger or disappointment. She was constantly giving in to his demands, late bedtimes, missed chores, indulgences, and it created chaos in their home. One day she paused and asked herself, what is the greater gift I can give him? To give in to his demands or to teach him how to respect boundaries? She chose the latter. With consistency and compassion, she set clear limits. She explained why those limits existed and how they would help him grow into a responsible, self-respecting person. While he resisted at first, over time, he began to understand the value of those boundaries. And in the process, she felt her own fear and guilt dissolve. She realized that true love meant not giving him everything he wanted, but giving him what he truly needed to grow. Boundaries with compassion teach our children how to manage their own inner landscape. They teach them that love isn't about unlimited freedom, but about finding the strength to stand in the face of life's challenges, understanding their actions, and taking responsibility for their choices. The lesson here is simple but profound. Compassionate boundaries are the foundation of a child's growth, resilience, and freedom. By offering these boundaries with love and understanding, we teach our children to respect themselves, to make mindful choices, and to navigate the world with wisdom and courage. Boundaries are not about control. They are about creating the safe, nurturing environment where true personal growth can happen. In setting these boundaries, we hold the space for our children to flourish, just as a gardener holds the space for their plants to grow, knowing they must reach toward the light on their own. In this balance, both parent and child discover the power of true freedom, the freedom that comes from self-discipline, self-respect, and love. Chapter 9. Letting go without losing the art of love without clinging. There comes a moment when you realize your child is no longer just yours to protect and guide. They are becoming their own person, with their own thoughts, beliefs, and choices. They are stepping into a world where their path is no longer fully aligned with yours. This realization hits hard, especially when you've poured so much of yourself into shaping their future. Letting go can feel like a loss, but it is also a profound gift, a gift that allows both parent and child to grow beyond the confines of dependency. In Buddhism, one of the most profound teachings is about attachment and its role in suffering. The Buddha taught that our attachments, whether to people, outcomes, or identities, create the very suffering we try to avoid. And as parents, we face a unique form of attachment, the belief that our children must remain within our grasp, following our guidance, making choices that align with our hopes and dreams. But the truth of love is different. True love, according to Buddhist wisdom, is about freedom, not possession. This moment of letting go is an invitation to free both yourself and your child from the expectations and fears that have governed your relationship. It is an opportunity to embrace the natural flow of life, recognizing that their journey is their own to navigate. Letting go is not the end of love. It is the beginning of a deeper, more expansive love, one that is free of the burden of control. The fear of losing our children, of no longer being needed, can create attachment. It's a natural instinct, isn't it? The moment they are born, they become the center of your world, and you vow to protect them, to shape their future, to ensure that they never feel the pain and uncertainty you once did. As they grow, that need to protect them intensifies, especially when you see them making decisions that might lead to discomfort or hurt. But the fear of losing them creates a subtle form of clinging, an emotional grip that can stifle their growth. We hold on tightly to their choices, their lives, trying to control the direction they take. We offer advice, suggestions, and, at times, demands. And in doing so, we forget that they are not extensions of ourselves. They are separate souls on their own journey. By holding on too tightly, we stop them from becoming who they are meant to be. I think of a mother who, for years, steered her daughter's every decision, where to go to school, who to be friends with, even what career to pursue. She felt that her daughter's choices reflected on her own success as a parent. But as her daughter approached adulthood, she began to see a shift, a resistance, a reluctance to follow the path her mother had set for her. The mother was blindsided by this. Why was her daughter pulling away? Why wasn't she grateful for all the guidance she had received? In that moment, the mother felt the deep ache of attachment. It was not just fear of her daughter's choices. It was the fear of losing her influence. She had tied her sense of worth and control to her daughter's conformity to her wishes. This fear, this attachment, clouded her vision of the true nature of love. Love that allows freedom, love that does not demand. Love, in its most awakened form, allows freedom. True love does not require possession, it requires trust. To love is to trust your child's journey, even if it diverges from your own. To release the need for control is not to stop caring, but to recognize that your child's life is their own, and that they must walk it with their own feet, no matter how painful it may be for you as a parent to watch them struggle. In Buddhist practice, the concept of non-attachment is not about indifference or abandonment, but about recognizing the impermanence of all things. When we release our need to control, we create space for life to unfold in its own natural rhythm. Love becomes an offering, not a demand. We trust our children to find their own way, even if their path takes them far from where we imagined they would go. Consider the story of a father who once felt his child's success was his own success. He pushed his son to follow his footsteps, to become the kind of man he himself wished he had been. But one day, his son came to him with a decision that shocked him. He wanted to move to a different city, far away, and pursue a career in the arts, a path the father had never considered. The father's initial reaction was one of fear, fear of losing his son, fear of losing control over his future. But after much reflection, and in the quiet moments of stillness, the father realized that his love for his son had been shaped by his own need to control, not by a love that allowed freedom. With a deep breath, he let go of his fears and gave his son his blessing. The son, in turn, flourished in his new life, gaining independence, confidence, and a sense of purpose that he had never had before. This story highlights the deep wisdom of letting go. The father's decision to release his attachment did not mean he loved his son any less. On the contrary, it meant he trusted his son's ability to navigate life, to make mistakes, and to learn. The love was no longer burdened by expectations. It was free, open, and supportive. As parents, our role is not to shape our children's lives, but to help them shape their own. We create the space for them to grow, to explore, to fail, and to rise again. When we release them, we are giving them the most profound gift, the gift of self-determination. This freedom doesn't diminish our love. It enhances it because it is rooted in trust and respect. In letting go, we also find our own freedom. We no longer carry the weight of fear, expectation, or attachment. We trust ourselves and the wisdom that life, in its unfolding, will bring. This trust in our children and in the flow of life itself is the highest form of love. The lesson here is simple yet powerful. Love without attachment is the greatest gift you can give your child and yourself. To love without clinging is to trust, to offer space for your child to grow into who they are meant to be, even when that path doesn't align with your own hopes. It is to recognize that love is not ownership but freedom. The freedom for your child to explore, to stumble, and to rise. In this love, both parent and child discover true liberation. And through this liberation, the greatest growth takes place, not just in the child but in the parent as well. Conclusion: awakening to the sacred path of parenthood. Parenting is not just about raising children, it is about raising ourselves. In every moment, in every challenge, and in every joy, our children offer us the opportunity to evolve. They are the mirrors of our deepest selves, reflecting the unresolved wounds and unhealed parts of us. But they also hold the keys to our greatest transformation. Through them, we encounter our deepest fears, but also our greatest potential for healing. In their growth, we grow. In their pain, we learn to heal. And in their joy, we find the reminder that we are capable of loving without boundaries, without expectations. Our children are not here merely to be shaped by us. They are here to help reshape us. As we guide them, we also find ourselves being guided back to truths we've forgotten, to parts of us we've left behind. Parenting becomes the sacred path that leads not only to their growth, but to our own spiritual awakening. They offer us a chance to reclaim what was lost, to heal what we never knew needed healing, and to love deeper than we ever imagined. So the next time you feel triggered, overwhelmed, or lost, pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this child here to teach me? How can I use this moment not just to parent, but to remember the sacred truth of who I am? In the chaos, there is clarity. In the struggle, there is strength. And in every tear, there is an opportunity for deep healing for both you and your child. Parenting, when viewed through the lens of mindfulness and compassion, is not a burden. It is a path of liberation, a path that leads us to freedom, not just for our children, but for ourselves. By embracing this journey with presence and love, we transform not only our lives, but the future lives of those who come after us. As you take the next step on this path, remember, you are not alone. The struggles are universal, but so is the power to heal. Let us walk forward together with courage and compassion. And if this video has touched you or offered a new perspective, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your journey matters, and so does your voice. Let's share this wisdom together, because the more we walk this path with love, the more we awaken. Stay present, stay compassionate, and remember, parenthood is not just a responsibility, it is a sacred journey.